Welcome to the Sales Factory. It's your host, Coach Carroll. I'm super pumped. I got my man Jacob Hicks in the building. We're going to be talking about mindset. This dude's a success coach, chaos proofing your day, building a moat that actually works, how to set boundaries. We'll talk a little bit about life balance. I see that on his website as well. So I'm excited. Jacob coming all the way in from Des Moines, Iowa. I'm sure you guys probably got snow on the ground like us here in Louisville, Kentucky. So, Jacob Hicks, welcome to the Sales Factory, my man.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, what an intro. Love it.
Yeah, I know, man. I love doing these things. It's a good time. It's fun. And let's hop right into this, man. Tell the listeners for the Sales Factory, we got guys like 13-year-old kids just bought a lawnmower, starting a business, to an insurance or business guy that's maybe got a million, $10 million book, and everybody in between. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself so they know who they're listening to today.
Yeah, so I mean, you kind of said it in the intro, but born and raised in Iowa, super small town of just a little under 5,000 people. Came up in sales and retail, actually, sold suits for about 4 or 5 years.
Sick.
So it was a great learning experience, definitely a trial by fire at times. But I'm glad I'm here. I'm, where I am. I'm glad I probably wouldn't go back if I didn't have to. But since then, I mean, I've done a little bit of everything, pretty eclectic sales background. So I did real estate for a little while during COVID, which was as hard as you could probably imagine. I was in synthetic DNA for a hot beat. And then most recently, within the last couple of years, I was an outside sales rep for a company that sells, well, pretty much all the name brands you've ever heard of for eyeglasses, like Ray-Ban and everything like that.
Okay.
And then I also sold eyeglass lens design. And then since then, I've launched my own business and I'm loving every minute of it, I tell you.
Very cool, man. Very cool. Well, success coaching, guiding you to a complete and balanced life is what your website says. This is
Mm.
going to be fun. We'll dig into that because I'm a big proponent of there's no such thing as balanced life. So I'd love to hear. We'll talk about that a little bit. But you got an extensive sales background. Clearly, you've sold a lot of stuff, which we love.
Yep.
Obviously, this is called the Sales Factory. Why don't you give the listeners maybe right off the rip, like tell us a war story, man. What's one of the craziest sales you've ever had, or like maybe one of the wildest sales experiences of being out there in the trenches that everybody can get a good little laugh or an aha moment from?
Oh gosh. So, I mean, I guess a few years ago, during my, my road warrior days, so I was, selling stuff in the optical world at the time. And I just started a new job, and things were, going as well as they ever can in the sales world. Drinking from a fire hose, like every sales job, I feel like. And I had some connections already in the territory that I was starting to work.
Mhm.
And one of the largest players in my territory reached out and saying like, "Hey, we're thinking about making some changes. What do you have anything to offer? Like, what are you kind of thinking?" And we were able to take it to really incredible levels because the thing you have to understand about the optical sales world is that there are usually for the larger players, they're going to have several dozen to several hundred different offices. Meaning that for me as their rep, I had to really tailor everything individually. So I can't say like, hey, at the high level, you're getting this price, but I have to go into every single individual office and train them individually on all of the new products, but then also make sure I'm checking in with them and making sure that the follow-up process is there on a really consistent and cyclical basis. So I mean, that was a pretty fun and big win for me at the time.
Nice, very cool, man. Very cool. Well, let's talk about balance, man. What talk to me about this? Your complete guide, guiding to a complete and balanced life.
Mm.
I think it's kind of impossible to have a balanced life. So maybe you'll change my thinking on this, or maybe we'll have some good dialogue on it. But for me, like I think there's times when hey man, I can have super family heavy time, but there's
Mm.
other times where just a couple days ago where I was up till 5 in the morning working on some base code for a new project that I was working on here at Carroll Media. So like how do you talk about that with people that are maybe hustlers and entrepreneurs that say like, hey man, sometimes it's balance and sometimes it's not?
So, I mean, honestly, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, that's really the first place that we start when you're talking about balance, right? It's like, I mean, some folks come to me, they're big entrepreneurs, big salespeople, and they have a lot of success, but they realize that they don't know their kids very well, or they, if like they don't see their wife nearly as often as they would like. So, first question is you have to really determine like what season of life you're in. And I
Mhm.
think that there are seasons of life when you have to be grinding, right? Like you were saying, like sometimes you're going to be working those, 10, 12, 14, 16, whatever hour days. But it has to be seasonal. It can't be like, hey, this is what I've been doing for the last 15 years. That's just, I mean, a one-way trip to burnout or where you're like really losing sight of the important things in your life. And you have to really decide what your priorities are in that individual season of your life. Now, all of this kind of comes down to what it really boils down to is intentionality and how intentional you are with managing your time, your workload, what you're really focusing on. So, for
I get down with
example,
that.
I mean, when we're talking about, like family people that maybe they've started a new business, and anybody that's ever started a business knows that you have to, like, if you start a business and you're going full time at it, you have to work really, really hard. You have to put in a ton of hours, make the mistakes and figure stuff out, which doesn't leave as much time for everything else. Now, I still believe that even though you might be working, like 7 to 7 or 7 to 9, Monday through Saturday or whatever the case might be, even though you're working those crazy long, crazy hard hours, if you're intentional with what you're doing, you can still set aside time for family, for friends, for these other things. Now, what for me personally, what that looks like, I said, I mean, I'm kind of in a grinding phase of my life right now where I'm working all those long hours, but for me, Sundays are my day off. Period. Full stop. And I'm very, very intentional about that from unplugging from my phone. I'm not doing all that other stuff. I'm, going to church with my mom, spending some time with friends and family. And that set aside time, even though I'm working those 10, 12, 15-hour days, most every other day of the week, and intentionality still allows me to spend time with people that I love and to keep, I mean, really a priorities and focus.
I like that, man. I give you one on that one because I didn't know, guys. I didn't know. This is my first time meeting Jacob. I have like this dude comes in here and says you can be a successful entrepreneur doing the Tim Ferriss 4 hour work week bullshit. Well, this is going to be fun.
Right.
But no, we're good, man. I think that's true. The seasonality, the seasons of your life are super important, and also understand that like you can come in and out of season too, right? Like,
Yeah. Hmm.
one of the things that I love is like I'm here in my studio in Kentucky, which is in, this is about 400 square foot finished space in my barn that's detached from my house. Well, I've got a 2 year old baby girl, and we got a son that'll be here in June. One of the things that I love most
Congrats.
is like, thank you, I appreciate it. Willow doesn't necessarily like need me there all day long like mama is, right? She's glued to her mom. She
Mm,
like
yep.
doesn't even like, she won't let me put her to bed. We're going through this phase right now that's breaking dad's heart because it's like I can't put this kid to bed. She like screams at me. She goes, no, no, dad. She'll come to me. I'll be in my recliner. She'll be like, get up, dad. Mama rock me. I'm like, all right, dad, I'll get up, right? But like what's cool is like, we have our office and I'll go there a couple days a week. But like when I'm working from here, I go in to refill my water and use the restroom, or I go in for lunch, whatever. That couple little minutes that I get to see Willow,
Yep.
she gets to see Dada, and then it says, "Hey, Dada's going to work." She go, "Dada, go to work," and it's like I don't feel guilty about that. I get to see her a couple of times throughout the day, which then says,
Hmm.
okay, cool, I can work this 12-hour day. And I know that there are those trade-offs there. I also, Jacob, I'd love your thoughts on this. I run a 3-1 model. So I'm on for 3 weeks, and then
Mm,
the last week of the fourth week of each month, I call it my block week. So next week will be
mm.
my block week. And I'm off. No internal meetings, no external meetings, unless something is like absolutely on fire pops up. Hello, welcome to being the owner. Like shit does, it
Yeah.
funnels to
Yep.
you. Or like I had a podcast or a webinar that was supposed to happen last month. The influencer partner, like something happened with them, and so they had
Mm,
death in the family. We got to move it to next week. Okay,
yeah.
but I run that model so that like I can run 16, 18 hour days for 3 weeks in a row, and then it's cool. Racehorse comes off the track, to use a Kentucky analogy, for that
Yeah.
week to cool down and recharge. So, what's your thoughts around that, man?
Honestly, I haven't heard of that before, but I love it.
That's a Coach Carroll original, baby.
I love that thought. I mean, really what it comes down to when we're talking about time blocking or managing your time or whatever really kind of matters, I think it all comes down to what I call ABE, always be experimenting. So trying different things and
Ooh,
figuring out what will work for you. And I mean, like sometimes, I mean,
like
like
that.
you said, like sometimes shit hits the fan and you gotta like, hey, this is my block week, I'm off, but like some stuff's happening. Like this is gonna influence the rest of my month or whatever.
Yeah.
So you have to like pop in sometimes, but like just finding the things that work well and work well for you in the systems that you want, because ultimately, like we're not, I really don't believe that I mean, there are exceptions to salespeople and entrepreneurs, right? But I believe in broad strokes, you're painting with a broad brush, that most people want to help other people, right? And ultimately, what we want is like, sure, we want to have all the fun stuff and we want to have the super nice house and the crazy cars and all that stuff. That's fun, right? Ultimately, what we're really looking for is to build the life that we want to live. So like for you, like that's awesome that your business is in such a place that you can do 3 weeks on, work in those longer days, and then take that full week off to, spend with your family or friends or do whatever you kind of want. Like that's fantastic. So I've also heard folks do well with like do like 4 on and 1 off, where they do
Yep.
like, Monday through Thursday, and then maybe they take like a Friday or a Monday off or whatever.
Yep.
Like just finding those systems that work for you and the life that you ultimately want to lead is awesome. But I think the critical thing here is that you have to know what kind of life you want to lead.
Ooh, yeah. Start with the end in mind, right? Like what
Yep.
makes you happy. I ask entrepreneurs all the time. I was on recently Tommy Mello's podcast. He runs a
Mm,
$225 million garage door company, and he was telling me that actually the episode just dropped. So if you guys are listening to this, you can go check it out. It's episode 400 on the Home Service Expert podcast. But Tommy was saying that like these kids will come up to him that are 27 years old. They're married. They got two kids, and I say kid because I'm 37. They're 10 years younger than me. But it's like Tommy's like they come up. They're like, Tommy, I want to be like you, man. I want to grow $100 million a year company and like go raise PE money and like have these big exits.
mm,
And Tommy always asks him like, why? And really the trade off, right? Because here's where I always love these like uh not an oxymoron, but like where like two things are like both true or like but they're at
like
odds with each other. Um,
dichotomy.
yeah, dichotomy. So like the challenge is like cool. You want to go build $100 million your business. The amount of sacrifice and what you'll have to take away
Hmm.
from your kids to do that is very very difficult. This is one of the reasons why my wife and I waited so long to have kids. Right, is because
Hmm.
we were building this business. Because Jacob, I mean, dude, 5 years ago, no, the business was not at a place where I could have my block week, right?
Yeah.
But we are now, and we run so hot and heavy, and I'm building so fast that like that's what it's demanded of me. Otherwise, I do kind of get burnt out, and my decision making starts waning. I start nitpicking at my team members, and it's
Yep.
like fuck. They would start looking at me like fuck, dude. Why don't you go take a vacation and leave us the hell alone,
Right.
right? But I think in the podcast we talked about like these you have to understand why do you want what you're saying that you want and what
Yep.
you're saying that you want, is it truly what's in your heart of hearts?
Yep.
Because you know I think with social media and the world that we live in now, I mean, fuck all these numbers that Elon's dropping from all this money that's floating around. I'm like, fuck, a couple
Mhm.
$1 million isn't anything. And it's like, no,
Right.
it still kind of is a lot of money. It's just not in comparison when you're like, oh fuck, the Pentagon lost 1.5 billion, right? It's like what?
Right.
So I get where that's coming from. How do you help people with that? Like, how if somebody's listening right now, or they come to you for coaching, like, and they're like, man, I don't know what I want, or like, how do I figure out what makes me happy, or how to figure out what it is that I should want to get out of life. What do you say to those people?
So, I mean, honestly, a lot of people ask me exactly that question. Like, I don't know what I want. And I think the truth is that when it comes to like figuring out what you want, I mean, there's a couple of pieces. I think you have to try stuff. Like you
Mm,
can't just be sitting at home on your couch watching this incredible documentary or reading the next greatest book about, whatever new thing that's coming out. Like those things are good, but those are just tools. And those are tools you have to put in your tool belt to go to work. And you have to go out and try stuff. You have to be willing to take a little risk, and you have to be willing to reach out on LinkedIn and say like, "Hey, I'm thinking about, getting into this industry or trying this job," and find those people that are doing it now and maybe have some informational interviews with them. It's like, hey, can I take, 15 minutes of your time and see if like I'm thinking about doing this. Does it make sense for me? Like how much does it suck?
mm,
I mean, but you have to get out and try some things and be like, well, I think one of the strongest and most powerful strategies that people can have in sales or business or whatever in life in general is coming from curiosity, is finding like asking those questions in a very genuine, open way and just asking questions and questions and questions until you start to kind of figure out some answers. Now, after you've, kind of tried some things, I think the next biggest step, which I think you kind of hit on, um, was like figuring out why you want what you want
mm,
and that's not something that you can do overnight. This is something that can take months or years sometimes to like, you have to do a lot of self reflection and introspection to really figure out what your why is. And like me, for example, like for most of my 20s, I can what I say tell people now is that my passion was for profit. So if I got a new job, I would make more money, I was going to go after that new job. Like that's kind of all there was to it. Didn't really care. It's been since then, since I've been doing all this work on the why. And Simon Sinek has a great book on this. Um, and I've realized for me personally, whether it be coming on like your podcast or putting out my podcast or putting like my stuff on my blog or social media stuff or whatever, if there is something that I can do that I can put out into the world that will help one more person, then I will do it. And that's kind of the not even the foundation, that's the bedrock that I'm kind of building everything else on.
That's cool, man. I like that. Yeah, and I would say too is like if I could talk to my younger self, like
Mm,
things are going to change. Your priorities will change.
hmm.
What sets you on fire will change. There was a point in time where, a girl broke my heart and I said, I'm never going to get married. I'm never going to have
Yep.
kids, right? And I think some of the most successful men I know, they had to have, I'll talk to the fellas real quick, that yeah, you got to have the girl that breaks your heart, and then you got to find the one that puts it back together,
Yep.
to really understand what this life's all about. I think finding a partner that you can do life with is so
Mm,
powerful. And I'll tell you, man, when we had our kid, I used to think it was like it was so shallow when people are like, "Well, my kids are my purpose in life." I'm like, "Well, you just don't have a purpose, and so you're defaulting to that."
yeah.
Um, I, I was so short-sighted because at the time I didn't have kids, and so I didn't know how
Mm,
powerful they were. I told my wife, man, like we got married and then we had Willow, and I was like, fuck, this is the starting line. Like, wait,
yep.
like now we're getting started,
Just
right?
getting
This
going.
is the fucking magic. And so like if you're a guy in his 20s, like understand, or even in your teens, like I know there's some younger cats that listen to the podcast, like it's okay to think that like, hey, right now I'm purely just I need to go after money, right? Like and Jacob,
Mm,
just what you said, like I don't think you were wrong for that. Was your motivation for that? That's that
yeah.
back to that season of life, right? Like
Yeah.
you're going to go through seasons. You're going to have times where, yeah, sometimes work is the most important thing. And like, I
Hmm.
remember like having girlfriends back in the day where like I told them like, no, you do not come first in my life. My business comes first. I'm building
Yeah.
this thing, right? And like, they didn't say my girlfriend much longer after that.
Nice.
But what's also cool is like you will find the one out there. One of the things I think is the most challenging are fellas that come to me midlife that say, "Hey DJ, fuck this factory job," or I'm done packing these boxes at Amazon. I'm gonna go start my own business. And you got a wife and a kid, and now what happens is you're asking somebody that's depending on you to now support you in this endeavor, and
Mm,
they may say, "Hey, that wasn't the ride that I signed up for." To me, I think that's a very, very, very tough, like maybe one of the possibly the toughest entrepreneurial spots to be in. Like if you're
yeah.
super, super young, it's easy to start then, right? Like that's I tell everybody like I'll be 37 this year. I've been doing this since I was 18. I've been an entrepreneur half the years I've been alive. Like I meet
Mm,
guys that are in their 50s that I've been in my career longer than they have, right? So like
yeah.
that is where I push a lot of my like success to, is that I made a lot of mistakes early on when it didn't fucking matter, and so I could recover quickly. I think the next easiest way is like late in life, like cool. I'm in my sunset years. I'm gonna go try to be an entrepreneur. I think the absolute hardest part, man, is like when you got kids that
Mm,
are like
in the
in their
middle.
tens, like in that middle spot, man, is super tough. But just know that like it's okay. It's okay to change, and life's all about the adventure, and don't take it too seriously, man. Like none of us make it out alive.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, my favorite, I mean, I've had conversations just like that with folks that are like, hey, I've got this wife and the kids, like, but gosh, I just love this, this side project thing that I've been doing forever. And finding like what I always suggest to people is like, I'm a big believer in steps of faith, not leaps of faith,
ooh,
meaning
like that.
that if somebody like you were just saying like hey I'm middle of my life I think I want to start a business now, like that's great, that's fantastic, let's figure out how to do it in like less time than all day every day. And usually what I suggest to folks is find like a couple 2 3 2 hour time blocks in a week that you can absolutely dedicate to your entrepreneurial business, the thing you're really excited about. And then we talk through like getting your leave number put together, meaning like, hey, how much money do you really have to be making in order to jump into this thing and make it full time for you? And figure out what those things are. And then as you're growing, then you can pitch it to, I mean, essentially pitch it and sell it to, your significant other or whomever, saying like, hey, here's where I'm trying to get to, and here's how we're doing so far. And I think if we keep going as we're going, I'll get there in a year or whatever it is. Do it that way and keep working your full-time gig. And that way people are provided for, but you're still scratching the entrepreneurial itch. And if you're making good business decisions, eventually you'll get there.
I love that, man. Yeah, there. I razzed on Timothy Ferriss's 4 Hour Work Week. It's actually a really good fucking book.
Yeah.
He in there he talks about MVP. This is big in the tech world, like minimum viable product.
Mm,
And there is like a way of saying there's two different business models, right? Like you want to sell sailor shirts, right? Like the blue and white French sailor shirts. There's this example
yeah.
from the book where it's like, cool. You could order a bunch of inventory, which is going to run up a credit line, and then you can try to go rent a retail space and then stock the retail space and then hope customers show up.
Mm,
Or you can build a landing page that collects name, phone numbers, email addresses, and a fake credit card form, or like not even a credit card form. And when, like, all right, step one, name, phone number, email address. Step two will be where you put your payment. They complete step one. Oh, hey, currently we're sold out. We'll let you know when we restock it, right? And then you can
hmm.
push people to that product. And then now you can see if, like, are there actually customers that want to buy your shit? Because listen,
Yeah.
one of the biggest problems, man, with entrepreneurs are we smoke our own crack, man. Like
Yeah.
we are so
We believe it.
delusional. We come up with an idea.
Right.
We're like, this is the best fucking thing in the world. This is going to be amazing. And then oftentimes it turns out not to be. And so I love that steps of faith, not leaps of faith, man. That was good.
Mm,
Talk to me. We're about halfway through the show. Talk to me about
mm.
chaos proofing your day. I see you've got a blog about this on your website, and I was like, that's interesting. I want to have that guy talk about that a little bit. What are
Mm.
you talking about there, man?
So this is probably one of my favorite strategies, honestly. So this kind of it starts in time blocking. So time
Love
blocking, for
it.
those who may not know, like you start at 8 o'clock in the morning for the next hour. You're working on this thing. You actually schedule that in like every day. Like that's how you're breaking down your day. And then once the 9 o'clock hits, then you switch gears and you're going to your next time block and you're working on that stuff, whatever it might be. What I realized early on, this was several years ago, is I was time blocking, but then a client calls or something happens, and like you said, like the shit hits the fan, hair's on fire, you got to deal with an emergency, regardless if it's an actually emergency or not, but it's something you have to deal with pretty immediate, right? A lot of urgency. So what I started doing back then was I would schedule in what I called chaos time every single
Mm,
day. And usually that was for like 30 minutes to an hour, just kind of depending. Essentially, what that allowed me to do is when somebody called with their hair on fire, I actually had time blocked out for that particular emergency. Now, to a little more advanced things, like I said, I do that every single day. I still do it. But the more advanced technique with it is, let's say you're doing this for a couple of weeks, it's going well. And I always tell people to start writing down the things that come up in your chaos time. Now, you might start noticing a few patterns. Like maybe there's like one client who's, kind of dramatic sometimes. They're always kind of up in their own mind about stuff, and they're calling you 2, 3 times a week with some new emergency, some new big thing that we have to deal with right then and there. If you start noticing that, then you can start time blocking, actually set aside a time block for that specific thing. And then again, will protect your chaos time. But what chaos time will do is it should allow you to protect the rest of your calendar so that if somebody calls at, 1 o'clock in the afternoon with some crazy emergency, that you're not pushing everything back. And by the end of the week, you need a whole extra day just to get everything done.
mm. I like that one, man. That's good. I'm a huge fan of time blocking. I've helped my team members time block. It's made them more
Yeah.
efficient, and it's super powerful. Talk to me about building the moat, about setting boundaries that actually work. Because there's a famous saying that the way that you get to 1 million in revenue is saying yes to everything. The way that you get to 2 million in revenue is by saying no to everything.
Yep.
Let's talk a little bit about setting boundaries for the listeners.
So, well, first thing I always like to say when we're talking about boundaries is boundaries cut both ways. Meaning that I feel like oftentimes when people are talking about boundaries, they're talking about boundaries in the light of, oh, this person doesn't show up for work or this person's doing this or, that kind of stuff, right? Which I mean, it's absolutely true. Like that's absolutely valid. But it also comes down to the boundaries that we're setting with ourselves. And this, again, kind of, I mean, I guess kind of ties back to what we were initially talking about is about that intentionality piece, right? So, for example, like you said, you have, your 3 weeks on and you're 1 week off. Your blocked off week. You have to be very intentional and make sure that you're actually getting all the stuff done. and setting boundaries both with those folks on your team, but then with yourself. Now,
Mm.
I'll break it out in my blog post like you were talking, but the first thing that I always recommend to folks, you got to be able to define your priorities. And I mean, in sales, I mean, this the phrase that we use all the time is your big rocks. So
Yep.
like when you get, you get in for the day, what are the, one, two, maybe three at the top, three things that you have to get done? What are the critical things that you have to get done in order for like things actually to move forward? And again, you have to time block around that. I mean, that's really, really,
Well, Jacob, on
really
that real
critical.
quick though, like
Yeah.
what if people are having like because a lot of times, and I even see this with my team that I have to
Mm,
help them is like, what if they have a hard time prioritizing, right? Because like I always I love I think there are like three
mm,
levels of employees, right? There are the people that can do the stuff that's on the list. There's the people that can make the list, but then there's the people that can
mm.
organize the list, right? Well, meaning
Yeah.
prioritize. What's something like yeah, sure, like we can, we got to build this moat and we got to own it and do it, but like, what if like my problem is that I have a hard time figuring out what those three things are, right? Like, because I got 12 things on my list, Jacob. Like, how do I?
Yeah.
What do you mean you only want me to pick three, dude? There's fucking 12 things that got to get done today. Yeah, what like how do you handle that?
So, I mean, really kind of what it comes down to is your focus, right? So like when it comes down to our day to day, is like it's really easy to get kind of caught up in like the day to day activity, right? But you have to maintain focus on the long term goals. Now, for a lot of like businesses and salespeople and stuff, that's going to be revenue, right? So when it comes to like your bigger, more higher priority things, you have to ask yourself, like, what are the things that are actually going to help me drive towards that ultimate goal? Now, that also assumes that you're setting goals on a reasonably consistent
Right.
basis
Yeah.
and
That's what I was
setting up
gonna say.
milestones to get there. So
Somebody's scratching their head going, I
yeah,
don't have any goals. Like that's the
that's the
problem,
first part.
Toto. Fix that
Yep,
one
yeah,
first.
yep. Start with the goals first. So like I said, if you don't have the goals, then I mean, really, I mean, there's no point in setting priorities because you're not protecting anything.
Mm.
That's really what priorities are for.
Whoa. Like that. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Right.
Keep going.
No. So like I said, like priorities, like that's kind of like the first place that I have people start. The next piece, particularly when we're talking about, well, this is true on both sides of the boundary coin. When we're talking to other people, and when we're talking to ourselves, is we need to be able to communicate clearly, but we also need to, arguably more importantly, we need to be able to communicate kindly. Now, again, I mean, I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek. He talks about like telling the truth a lot. And one of the things that I've kind of stolen from him is you need to be able to tell people the truth, right? But you don't always have to tell people the truth in the moment. So sometimes, like if somebody's, doing something that's like really upsetting you or is just like treating you poorly, yes, you should be able to sit down and tell them the truth, but you don't have to do it maybe necessarily right then and there. Maybe
Yeah.
you take a day or two, take a step back from it, let kind of the emotions get out of your head.
Emotions. Yeah.
And then you say like, hey, hey man, can we, sit down for 15, 20 minutes or something I really need to, just discuss with you. And then you very clearly say, you know, I can't allow you to treat me this way. And this is a boundary that I'm setting around that particular behavior. The reverse of this, I think, is also true, is like I think you have to be kind to yourself because particularly if you're an entrepreneur, like there's the sad thing is that there's only 24 hours in a given day. And even if you worked all of those hours, there's still going to be more work to do, right?
Yeah.
So again, setting those priorities, but then being very kind with yourself, saying like, hey, I didn't get everything done that I wanted to get done on my list today. True. But I did get some pretty big steps made in, such and such area. I think is really, really important. The other thing I always recommend to folks, and this is going to be true across, boundaries or anything else, is being consistent.
Mm.
Because I mean, if you set a boundary with somebody and like I mean, people are people, right? Everybody's human, and they end up doing the crappy behavior to you again, but you don't say anything, then it's not their problem, it's yours. Like you need to be able to say, hey, we talked about this. I really don't appreciate this behavior. I need you to stop. Right. So setting that consistently. Um, One of my favorite things that I've been honestly kind of diving into a lot more personally is, I mean, we talk about working hard and playing hard, right? I feel like that's a pretty common phrase. Something I've added to it personally is you need to work hard, we need to play hard, and we need to rest hard. And I think it all again comes down to aggressive intentionality. So again, if you like we said at the top of the show here, if you are working those 15, 16, 18, whatever hour days, and you are also celebrating like crazy, like, hey man, I closed the craziest big deal, like the biggest deal I've ever had, and you go out for a crazy nice dinner with somebody, that's great, right? You need to celebrate those things, but you need to be very, very intentional about your rest. Meaning that, like for me personally, I can work from about 7 to 7, maybe 8 before like my mind just starts to get kind of fuzzy and like things aren't getting done very quickly and I'm not making very good decisions. And like I know that about myself. So I can work that, 12, 13 hours before like, hey, I need a proper break. So understanding that and setting aside that intentional time to rest, I think is absolutely critical.
I love that, man. Good stuff there, dude. Love that. Drop the cash register again, guys. Some good notes and good energy. I like this, man. I like
Mm,
this. Um, let's talk a little bit about on the personal side of things,
mm,
the time blocking stuff, all this is like super good. And like people that are entrepreneurs and salespeople, they need to hear this. Like the
yeah.
information you're talking about is super, super good. But I want to also just touch on, you said, you want to be clear and you want to be kind, and radical candor. It talks about clear is kind, right? Like you're
Mm,
only being kind to people when you're clear with them. And I think this comes through in a personal life as well.
mm,
Quick story. When I grew up, my cousins weren't the best of influences.
sure.
They were entrepreneurs, but they weren't hustling necessarily on the right side of the law, right?
Mm,
A lot of them were, boosting stuff. Some of them were selling drugs, and I'm very, very thankful. If there's one thing that positive that came out of my mom and my dad getting divorced, it's that I moved with my mom to Kentucky from Indianapolis because, I mean, hell, one of my cousins, he's no longer with. Actually, several of them are no longer with me, but one of them, he was in a house and. Some boys hopped in and kicked in the door, and it was a dope house. They shot everybody up, sold the dope, stole
mm,
the money, and like that's how he died. And I think it's super important when we talk about moats and boundaries. It's important to set those moats and boundaries personally as well, right? Like we can
yeah.
say, hey, let's make sure that our calendar is protected and we're operating efficiently, and and we're being clear and with all of our people we got to work with. But I think also you have to be clear with personal relationships sometimes,
Yeah.
because maybe somebody's listening to this podcast right now and like you've got family members that either just are putting you in situations that
Mm,
aren't setting you up for success, or maybe they're talking you out of taking that step of
yeah.
faith as Jacob was talking about. And it's okay, man. Like I just want to give you guys permission, like if you're listening to this right now, like it's okay to walk away from some of those relationships, even though they're family members, even though they're related to you. Because at the end of the day, I think that moat, that boundary, like you got to protect yourself first, right? You got to put your own
Hmm.
oxygen mask on first. And I just see too many people, man, end up in bad situations, lose opportunities, and we all know stories about this happening. That somebody was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and it either cost them opportunities, i.e., they got arrested, went to jail, or sometimes it cost them their life. So, talk about
Yeah.
that for a second, Jacob, about how important that is to just make sure that you're setting those boundaries with people that maybe aren't supporting you. Because you said, being an entrepreneur, man, it's tough. Like there's plenty of people that I always say, there's plenty of people that kick the stool out from underneath of you just to watch it fall, so they can laugh
Hmm.
at you. And you got to be on the lookout for those people.
Yeah. 100%. Well, and I mean, I feel like most people experience something, of that nature in their life at some point. The first point that I always think about when it comes to these kind of more personal relationships is that I'm a really, really big believer that you are who you spend the time with.
Yeah.
Meaning, another way to put that is that you are generally the sum average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. So, like, I mean, the obvious example is if you spend time with a bunch of bums that want to just play video games all day long and don't go to work, you'll probably be the sixth. If you spend time with, the opposite of the people that are super hardworking, going to school or they're educating themselves, reading books and stuff, and trying to figure out their next step in life, and you'll probably be the sixth. And I think the true is also true of like big time earners too. Like if you spend time with millionaires, highly, highly, highly successful people, then at the very least, you're going to be very successful yourself, if not already in that, 7 figure group too. The thing that I think about, and like in terms of like these more personal relationships, like my faith is very important to me. And I think about like some of these things, like setting boundaries and things, is that it can be really, really hard because you can love somebody even if you don't like them, I've found. And it's okay to love somebody from afar. Like you
Mm,
don't have to like you absolutely want the best for people, right? Like you don't want people to be, like stuff your cousins were into. Like you don't want people to be getting into that kind of stuff, right? But it's the hardest thing sometimes is that it's not our job to save people, and you can only lead a horse to water. You can't make them drink. So you can absolutely, extend the hand of help and, over and over and over again, but only if you're in a good place yourself. Like if you are also struggling, maybe you're into drugs or all this other kind of stuff. I mean, you haven't saved yourself, so how can you save anybody else? And like again, it's okay to get yourself out of that situation and to find, better people to surround yourself with. And the truth is like that's probably going to upset some people sometimes. But again, like you were saying, you have to look out for yourself first sometimes. And that doesn't mean you have to be a doormat or anything like that, but just being very clear and very kind of say, hey, I don't want this life for myself anymore. I'm I'm probably not going to hang out with you guys nearly as much as I used to because I'm looking for some other things. And again, if there are people that actually care about you, then I would hope that they would understand where you're coming from and where you're hoping to go.
yeah, I can remember I had posted on social media, this has been years ago, about I made a video about this point about, when I kind of cut my cousins off and I just
Mm,
stopped talking to them. And I had somebody message me and they're like, like I just can't get down with that DJ. Like, they're your family and you need to love them. And, maybe, who knows, maybe you could have saved them or, and I'm like, yeah, maybe, or maybe they would have drugged me down with them. Maybe the day that I was trying to save
yeah.
my cousin, I would have been in that house when them boys shot it up. Like,
Mm,
I think that's always the other side of that coin. And I think it's important that I talk about it. Let's talk about your faith for a second, man, because I love
sure.
this is something that I've been talking about more recently, just because like my relationship with God's gotten a lot stronger, and
Love it.
it's something that I think that it's important for me to talk about. I think it's something that it's important that I shine the light on, because I don't
Mm,
think that in our culture that it's talked about enough, especially guys that are successful.
yeah.
And I think it's cool when, you see some of these like high level athletes, like the first thing they do is like, give the glory back to God, because
Mm,
I'm a big fan of the belief that, if God puts you in a place to call you to a higher calling, or to amplify you as a person, He's
mm,
not doing that to build your ego. He's doing that so that you can build His kingdom. And so,
yeah.
what is there anything that you can share with us? Like, what's made that journey for you? What made you strengthen that relationship, or made you a little more spiritual?
Yeah. So, I mean, kind of walking all the way back to the beginning. I mean, I grew up in the church. Um, but I mean, I feel like my story is not particularly unique by in any way, but it's I mean, pretty common, I think, where like I grew up in the church, but kind of I was a kid. I was just going through the motions and stuff.
Right.
And I mean, I was in a small town too at the time, so I mean, there wasn't like a lot of kids at church a lot of the time, and like that kind of stuff. And then when I went to college, I mean, again, not unusual story here. Like I fell away super hard. Like I mean, it's what I kind of think was like a lukewarm Christian, where like if you asked me if I was a Christian, if I believed in God, I would have said yes. But beyond that, I mean, there was nothing beyond that. And I love to read. I read a lot. And when I first moved out to Des Moines, where I live, I was reading a business book, and I couldn't even tell you who it was now, but they had a chapter in there about having like some aspect of your life that's larger than yourself, whether it be religion or spirituality or just something like that. Because ultimately, I think we're put on the earth to serve one another. So I ended up going to a church here in Des Moines called Lutheran Church of Hope. And honestly, that's kind of what kicked it off for me. Like I started going there and I found like this young adult service, like, 20s and 30s. So people, that were my age going through similar struggles and trials and things. And I mean, I've taken a ton of classes since then and led different things and tried different things. And I've realized that that's kind of the whole point, I think. Like I said, I think we're put on the earth to serve one another. So we need to figure out ways to serve one another better. And I go to church usually twice
I
a
like that.
week, if not more often. And I mean, I'm in the Bible every single day.
Yeah.
And really, again, I think it's coming from curiosity and being open to answers that you may not like, and being open to the fact that you may not get all the answers that you want.
Yeah.
And like for me, like this will probably sound unusual, I guess, but like when it comes to like my coaching practice and everything like that, if my clients are faith-based and say, hey, my faith is important to me too, then I will open all of our coaching sessions in prayer. And I think that
That's cool.
kind of keeps things it just keeps our eye on the ball. I think, 'cause, yeah, we're trying to build businesses and we're trying to, grow revenue and this, that, and the other thing. But ultimately, I think that's where our priority should be.
I like that, man. That's pretty cool. Take that one to the bank. Yeah, I was talking to one of my buddies, Eric Wisdom. I need to get Eric on the podcast, but he I told him about this this list of like affirmations that I read, and he was like, "Why do you read that for, bro?" And I was like, "Oh man, it just makes me feel good. Like it's my mindset right." And he was like, there's this thing called Proverbs. It's got some pretty cool affirmations too. I was
Yeah.
like, shit, it was like, it was kind of like an aha moment for me here recently. So that was kind of cool, man. Well, dude, we got to wrap this thing up, get you out of here. Jacob, this has been fun, man.
Yeah, that's
A
great.
lot of times when I have first time guests on, it's a little soft. Maybe you caught me because I'm at the end of my day recording, so I'm like, you got the piped up version of Coach Carroll. But how can people find you if they want to connect with you online? Maybe check out your coaching, and then I think you've got a new podcast that you just started, right?
Yeah. So the easiest way to get in touch with me is going to be through my website. That's just jacobhickscoach.com. So you can find me on there. Feel free to reach out and shoot me an email. I'm on most social media. Facebook, LinkedIn is a big one. TikTok, Instagram, of course. And then, yeah, I just dropped my new podcast a couple of weeks ago. It's called Purpose Driven Progress. And it's got a lot of really great tips and fun stories in there for you guys. So check it out.
Very cool, man. Very cool. Well, dude, I appreciate you coming on the Sales Factory podcast, and we'll definitely have to have you back again in the future, man. This has been fun.
I would love that. Yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah, very cool. Guys, hey, if you haven't hit the subscribe button, make sure you tap in, smash the like, the comments, the shares. Helps me get in front of more people to help more people. Until next time, I'm Coach Carroll. Hustle, it's worth it, baby. You're in the Sales Factory.